Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Colin Dawson with Lockdown Movie Reviews. Again, I'll be honest, I went out there, saw the three movies back to back. There's one I didn't get to see, and I really should see it. But this one that I'm going to do today for you is News of the World. Tom Hanks. In and of it, he plays the infamous Captain Kidd. This was supposedly a Civil War hero that does have a little bit of something towards a fictitious thing. He was supposedly a captain, saw either hard combat or something else like that, the story of it. And supposedly there's a lot of Captain Kidds. He was a guy who went in there into the army, and it's a euphemism also from that time that they joined too young. Lied about their age, got in, didn't really know what they were getting into. So, in and of itself, it even says in the movie, anything that seems to be depictions of a actual person or historical are purely coincidence. So when I went in there, it instantly reminded me of this book series, Captain Kidd and Helga. He ended up having a menagerie of children and everything else from different areas that orphaned from the war and everything, and went around and they set up playwrights. In and of itself, I wish I could find one of those books right after I saw the movie. It is a complete childhood return in a way, even though it is in a very adult movie that does have a child in it throughout the entire situation, basically. The overall plot of it is that there is this child, Helga, who was a German immigrant family to Texas. They were killed, however it was, that came up, and she was adopted by a Native American group. There were people who were paid very handsomely to go out, irregardless of anything, and get these children back. And that's just what they did. In a way, it shows a change in American culture and goes more with the separation of the natives from settlers and pioneers than what was in the original founding of the country, where natives played more of an open role in the government, even being family members of many of the colonial situations. In a way, separation for that which was time and trial of error, rather than people would be overly spontaneous. But I digress into something that's probably more politics or anything. In and of this, it does have a huge political situation. Many times, Captain Kidd, Tom Hanks' character, had to be the referee between Union Reconstruction soldiers and the average Confederate citizen that wasn't part of the Army. Since he was a former Army person, he had to show his Army ID at all times. His main part of his self is that he now goes around because he's one of the few literate men left. One of the only things that could keep you out of the Army was that you were illiterate. So everyone who was literate was either laid up or something missing limbs, or else was probably on the North's payroll. He kept his recognition of rank card and his oath of repatriation with him at all times. It shows this being shown numerous times out there, going to different checkpoints, the military checkpoints in Reconstruction. It shows a lot of the civilian situation in a Reconstruction after Civil War, even if it doesn't show a lot of the military Reconstruction protocols. In that, I say it's very historically accurate. Helga was taken by the Kiowa tribe and lived with them for many years. Her person that took her from the Kiowas and was bringing her back to her family was a colored person, and he was hanged on the county line. The wagon was overturned. It was initially looked at as though it could be natives that had done it, and this comes up very quickly with everything, and then it comes up very quickly back and forth that this really wasn't. This really was a bad situation. And that seems to happen in almost every single part of the movie. A quick learning of who is really friend or foe, who is really the bad person, and a situation that goes back and forth, and we always seem to find out something that's a little bit more than what we know about the character. He was married very young, and he had a wife, but yet he has numerous affairs and hasn't gone and seen her grave, so he doesn't know if she's dead. This was a custom in most military states that if you were going to get married, well, go off to war, you had to be married. And you had to provide a son or a child, and you generally weren't allowed to leave until the person was pregnant. I do believe she died of typhoid, which is also something that does come up in that time period and affects pregnant women. That's why the husband being there would a lot of times, even Wyatt Earp's wife, first wife, died of typhus or typhoid fever. For some reason, it would always affect women in the first trimester. In a way, Helga could represent this child that could have been born, his daughter, a rekindling of something with his wife. And she is a complete mystery to him, and he learns everything over her. He goes into town, tries to leave her at a girls' school, and the next person that comes through for the units that take kidnapped children, or however it is, back to the areas. This could be just taken up and he leaves right then. But no. She runs away. He helps look for her. Everything else. She sees the only thing that she really remembers is family on the other side. She doesn't ever blame them throughout the entire movie. Even though at the end of it, she remembers and takes him back to the house at the end and recites everything that was done to them. One could even say that the family in it, in one instance where she is totally in fear and knows already at a young age that she could be sold off, as she sings a song in Kiowa over how Captain Kidd did a great deed, killing the men that were going to take her and had offered money. And he had made a minor distraction that they had to leave town instantly over, simply for them getting their papers checked. They caught back up with him, and he took the money that he had, and Helga did also, and stuffed it in his birdshot shells. And they killed them. Later on, when they lose their horse, there's a wagon accident, and they have to put the horses down. The Kiowa tribe, going across through there, gives them a horse. There's a puzzled look always on Tom Hanks' face when the Kiowa are coming through. And you're left wondering, only for the smallest second, could have been bushwhackers, looking to sell women off after the Civil War, being that there's no literacy, not really any opportunities. Through the news, he tells everyone what's happening, what has to be done. Survivors of coal wars, when the mines were set on fire back in the 1850s and everything else, goes over all that, starts a mild insurrection by a guy who's came to be nothing more than a local established lordship, something that was forbidden under the Constitution, considering the Confederacy and the Union were both fighting over what the true control and meaning of the Constitution was. And it speaks so much to these days right now. He eventually finds Helga's uncle. For some reason, after he leaves her there, and this one guy from an area, maybe it kind of reminds him of himself right before he gets there from the town they kind of liberated. They're reading the news. Sorry if I digressed here. He takes him to a wagon train. He's going to be one of these walkers. There's always numerous walkers on their wagon trains going west. And in a way, he probably had an opportunity to go west with his wife, but he didn't. He turns south, delivers Helga, goes and sees the tomb of his wife, has a finalization there of everything. Sees his last friend in the little adobe village that he lived in, and then turns back. For some reason, he goes back to try and see Helga. Her uncle can barely speak English and says she just won't work. The aunt says she runs away. She's tied to a stake in the middle of the yard so they can always see her with a tight knot around her ankle. This was something that generally happened. This is historically accurate. Some people have a club foot from it. They're tied so tight, cuts the circulation off, and they have a small little club foot back in the day. With it, how nice the Kiowa were and everything, and always moving in a giant dust storm that it came up from the war, trampling lost cows or whatever, to going through everything of losing a family 2 or 3 times in it, having the family killed off twice for her, and then rejected by her family. Then Captain Kidd came back and he wanted to take her. She can stay with him. They headed off again, and she helped him read the news and do acting parts and help along with it. And in and of itself, while it is a movie that should bring tears to one's eyes, it is a very happy ending movie. And if one can ever find the little child storybook that seems to be like it, The Adventures of Captain Kidd and Helga, one should probably get that and read about it. In this one, I say that there is not one single situation that does not bring a little bit of constant, continuing joy over each little small setback. And I think it shows through with the directing and the choreography and the acting, that while there are numerous setbacks, there are numerous things out there, simplisticness of song and dance from a little child after a major battle and putting some paint and mud on one's hand and painting the horse or any of these others makes this movie probably an eternal lifetime classic. And it does show the acting range of Tom Hanks in the fact that you know it's Tom Hanks. You know he's done Forrest Gump, Joe versus Volcano, numerous ones out there, but yet he is completely immersed in this role where he does not appear to be Tom Hanks. And this is one of the things that my mother pointed out with Morgan Freeman in a couple of movies, Chain Reaction and Unforgiven. If you just look at two stills in it, you can tell, if you look at it, that it is Morgan Freeman. You can tell looking in it that this is Tom Hanks. But in no way do you ever think that it is the character from Castaway, that it is Forrest Gump. It is a completely new separation and shows the dynamic of his acting ability and even his ability to interact with the young child actress who has some very tough role parts here and really does come across showing physical acting very much as she kind of grows in this acting role. And it is complete from the very first of it to the very end of it. And I just have to say, I know this is a long review, but it was a joy to watch the movie. And I'd love to see how the Academy comes and puts all the movies from this year into the way that they would be doing if there is an Oscars this year, since there were so few movies. This is Colin with Lockdown Movie Reviews. Like and subscribe.